Hi there, welcome along to the podcast. This week we have a very special guest with us. No, I'm not talking about the man who is the Spirit Cup champion, our resident Premier Soccer League winner, Courtney Freese. He's my partner in crime. Courtney, how are things today with you in Grays, Essex?
Absolute fantastic, Zayn. Being held down heavily by Ofsted. The weather is terrible, just how I like it. Very happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we hope those inspections at school go well, Courtney. I know they're very important and busy. But we have a man who I always say, Shaun Bartlett, Bafana Bafana legend, played in the Premier League. Do you go a day without anybody going, tell us about that goal?
That's the first thing that comes to mind, and to actually think about it 20 years later and we're still talking about that goal, like you've mentioned, and it just gives me goosebumps every time. And even the Premier League, I think about a week ago, their Instagram handle tweeted it and posted it, and I'm like, how do these people still post these things, And I'm almost close to 50, but on the bright side is obviously it's nice to be remembered still in the UK.
Mm-hmm. No, and that goal is phenomenal, the one you had for Charlton. And I know we've spoken to you about it. We're going to get into the pod. And we're going to talk to you about your new role at Cape Town Spurs, where you are coaching the old Ajax Cape Town. But before we get there, I just want to say to all our listeners out there, we love hearing from you. So hit us up on our social media accounts, OTW_podcast on Twitter and Instagram. Don't forget, we're on Facebook and YouTube on the Whistle podcast. And for those who listen to the most recent pod, we did our very first giveaway. I love curry. I know Courtney loves curry. I hope Shaun loves curry. And the best place to get your curry in Pietermaritzburg is Curry Court. And you know how we know that? Courtney told us, but more importantly, Ryan Moon, the Bafana Bafana forward who's playing in Sweden, he came on our podcast and he said he is missing a mutton curry from Curry Court. And you know what? Curry Court came on board. They sponsored 3 meals that we are able to give out to our listeners. And the first meal voucher will be going to Wilma Swales van Rensburg, who said, congratulations, Ryan, ever so humble and a truly inspiring young man for upcoming athletes and soccer players. Proud moments for you and the family. And then we had Lungani Zama, who said, this boy has a lot to say. We noted the treachery in forgetting his mom's kitchen, but that is between him and Mrs. Moon. Great to hear him mention that he went to Maritzburg College on a rugby scholarship, but ended up as a pro footballer. Too many kids think that they need to make their mind up so early. It's not the case. So again, 2 fantastic comments. We have 1 more meal to give away. Let us know what you thought about the interview with Ryan. Let us know what you'd like to hear on the podcast. Tell us, and you could get a taste of one of Pietermaritzburg's finest Indian food establishments, and we love our Indian food here. But without further ado, we're going to get into our pod today with Shaun. You've patiently waited. Like a good meal, like a good curry, it takes a little bit of time. But I'm going to hand over to Courtney.
You just made me hungry now. That's the problem.
Listen, it's nearly
I would
dinner
love a
time.
bunny chow. I would love a bunny chow now.
You know what? I'll tell you what, maybe we can get one of those meals to you and you could be the final taste tester. But before you came on the pod, I don't normally like to talk about what happens off camera, but Courtney was telling me how he could have marked you out of anything and there's no way you would have scored that goal against him against Manning Rangers. So maybe this is a perfect point to throw him under the bus and let him start the interview.
Behave yourself, Zayn. Oh no.
Yeah. Courtney, did you have the speed in the old days?
Well,
to
listen,
mark me?
Shaun, I didn't have anything. Let me just say that. I was just at the right place at the right time. Gordon said to me, well, I think we're short, we'll take you. And before I knew it, I had a medal Premier League winner. I was excited.
Listen, I always say to my players, it's not the distance you cover on the field, it's the distance between your ears that's important. So maybe you have that.
Well, there you go. There you go. We all have our attributes.
Yeah.
So Shaun, we follow you on Twitter a lot, and you've now moved. Can you tell for our listeners, where are you currently and why is it so significant, this move that you've just made?
Well, I've pretty much gone full circle, to be honest. I'm back in Cape Town. I've taken up head coach position with Cape Town Spurs. That's currently in the Glad Africa Championship, which is the second tier of professional football in South Africa. And next year, actually, it's going to be 30 years since I made my debut for Cape Town Spurs. So to come back as the head coach, it was very emotional. Obviously, there's a lot of hype around it. But the club do find ourselves in a very, very difficult situation. So for me, coming in is to try and turn things around. As a coach, there's no real mandate been given, but you always want to achieve the best possible outcome. So we're going to try and push as hard as we can and try and get promotion back to the PSL, because I think for Cape Town, it will be lovely and great for Cape Town Spurs to be at elite football level again, where it was in the 90s.
Now, Shaun, when you talk about Cape Town Spurs, for the listeners who are a bit younger than ourselves, who don't know about Cape Town Spurs and know the team after Cape Town Spurs, which John Cometas took over, can you just give us that historical thread? Because you started off at Cape Town Spurs and then it became, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, it actually goes way back to the 70s, and I think then it was predominantly, I think the colored players that played in those teams. And after a while, obviously, it was acquired by different owners. And when in the 90s, when John Cometas took the franchise after the club won the league and Cup double in '95, they made Cape Town Spurs and a club called Seven Stars into Ajax Cape Town. And they had a relationship with Ajax Amsterdam for more than 20 years, and until recently, where that relationship sort of fell apart. John Cometas went his own way. He started Cape Town City, and then the brother-in-laws kept the franchise of Cape Town Spurs and thought it was the perfect time to sort of reignite Cape Town Spurs and rejuvenate under new logo, new ownership. And obviously now with a new head coach as well. So I think it's just to bring back the interest in Cape Town in general and see how we can get the club back to where it really belongs.
Now, Shaun, you hold legendary status at this club before it became Ajax Cape Town, and a very famous club within on the South African shores on the beautiful Cape Town Peninsula. As a legend coming back into this club, yes, the team is in a difficult position, but this past weekend you got a draw in a local derby. What are you looking to do as the head coach of Cape Town Spurs?
Well, I think firstly, everybody's recognizing what I did with the club as a player. But I'll tell you, like I told the players, I'm coming back as a coach. Whatever I achieved as a player doesn't really count for what I want to do as a coach with this current squad. And I think that's the important thing is we want to achieve great things. And I said to the players, I'm a coach that want to be successful. It's a matter of whether they'll be part of that success or not. They need to make sure, obviously, they contribute as far as that is concerned. And I want to try and get this club, like I said, promoted to the PSL. And I think that's as difficult as it sounds and is. I think it's very much possible because I've got an unbelievable squad at Cape Town Spurs, very young. It's a good balance of young players and experienced players, and the quality is unbelievable. It's just a matter of reinstilling that confidence and making sure the players understand this is their job. There's nothing else for them, so you've got to make sure you invest enough. And when you hold up that trophy at the end of the season, that's your just reward for all the sacrifices and investment you had throughout the season.
Now, Shaun, you've coached at Golden Arrows, and to declare an interest, I'm a fan of Bafana Bafana. They were my team when I was in Durban. And you coached them. You were successful in getting them back to the Premier Soccer League. You've come into a situation where you're back in the league below our elite top class league in South Africa. When you look at how you got the team back up and the situation you've walked in now, how do you assess the challenge here compared to what you have before?
There's a few lessons I've learned from that Golden Arrows experience. Obviously, I will carry it into this particular job as well. But football evolves every year. And as a coach, I'm very fortunate enough to hold qualifications from obviously the UK. And I try and every year do continual player development skills and programs where it keeps me up to date as to what needs to be done in order to keep your players interested. And I think that for me ultimately is very important. So I think I've always been a coach that wants to plan properly, prepare, and then train and play to win. And I can actually tell you a little secret as well. I only told my wife at the end of that season of Golden Arrows, I showed her a page. I said, look, we're on 57 points. We've got one game to go to make 60 points. This is what I did at the beginning of the season. I took 5 games, blocks of 5 games, and my final total was 60 points. And she said, but is this a coincidence?
Wow.
I said, no, this is all about planning, You've got to look ahead and see where you want to go, how you're going to get there, and what solutions do you need to find along the way in order to achieve that goal. So for me, it's always been about planning. I think I'm very meticulous about the smaller detail, but also a lot about basics. I find that in South African soccer, if you focus on the basics, you already make your player a better player than the opponent.
You're coaching, obviously, at Cape Town Spurs now. You've spoken about planning being important, how goal setting was vital when you were at Golden Arrows. I mean, what a fantastic lesson. But you've come from coaching in South Africa's Premier Soccer League. It's one of the best resourced leagues on the African continent. When you coach at first division level, what are some of the things that people might be unaware that you don't have? Are you having to do more of the video analysis? Do you get less time to train?
There's a massive difference between, the Glad Africa Championship and the PSL in South Africa, because obviously your budget is not the same, which means you've got to cut back on a lot of things besides maybe the size of the squad. Also, salary-wise, your players won't earn the same as much as a PSL player. And then the technical team also, it can't be as big as the PSL team, because you've got to look at every cent, to be honest. And maybe most clubs in the Glad Africa don't have all the bells and whistles as far as PSL are concerned. But I can, honestly tell you, I think Cape Town Spurs is probably one of the best run clubs in the country. If you come to even the facility itself, you won't find many around the country where clubs actually own their own facility. And Cape Town Spurs do have that. So, you can come in the training ground. There's a shop where you can buy stuff. You can see the field itself. There's facilities for players to actually live on site as well, for the younger players, academy players. Those are all things that obviously most clubs don't have. And for me to come in here also is to ensure that obviously we want to improve on every aspect as far as the football are concerned. We do try, like you've indicated, to focus holistically on the player, whether it be physically, mentally, or nutritionally. We want to make sure we can improve the person itself with the player. And I think that's also very important, where we understand that we're dealing with people first for footballers.
Shaun, thank you. Thank you very much for that, the way you've answered that. I think it just gives an opportunity for the supporters, the local supporters, and Cape Town's Spurs world supporters to understand that the club is going in the right direction, and they've recruited a legend to help them get there. But let's bring you more into the world of football here, Shaun. You're an international, you played in the Premier League. Bafana have got a few games coming up in the next international break. What do you foresee their prospects in getting 6 points in the next game?
Well, I think the most difficult game will be the last game, going to Ghana, and they're not that far behind us. So I think we've got to try and make sure that we win at least the first game. Going to Ghana is going to be tricky because, only the top team qualifies for the playoffs. There are 10 groups, which means 10 teams qualify, and you've got to play another, last qualification game in order to qualify for the World Cup. So I think that in itself will pose a major challenge. But I think we've proved over the last 4 games that we're capable of competing with the best. And nobody gave us a chance to beat Ghana at home, firstly, and we've done that. And also not conceding goals has been, I think, pretty good, because there's a lot of stability at the moment, whether it be with selection or I think even the players that's been called up are on form. Before, it was always about, players that have done things in the past. Now, the head coach just look at which players are on form, who can I call up? And it's also a very young squad. And I think that in itself shows that he's not just wanting to build a team, but also he wants to get results from day one.
Percy Tau has moved from Brighton to Al Ahly. He's working with Pitso Mosamani. You played up front, Shaun. You know what it's like to face scrutiny, face pressure, big club games, big games for the national team. What advice would you give to Percy now that he's back in Africa? He's playing in Al Ahly. Brighton didn't work out as he might have liked. But what advice would you be giving him as he looks to almost restart his career, reignite his career, both at club and country level?
Yeah, I think the fortunate thing for me is having worked with Percy a few years ago at national team level when I assisted Stuart Baxter for a few games, and even recently now I'm still in contact with him. A bit of banter on social media, whether it be private messaging on Instagram. But I think he realized that moving to obviously Al Ahly and leaving Brighton, he needs to reignite his career, like you said. And I think he's obviously started on a good note. Getting 2 goals in your first game for Al Ahly is always a good start in a foundation. And when it comes to the national team, he's always carried himself well. He's got a big match temperament. And I know he knows that in some way almost the country depends on him, because he is the bright spark in our national team at this moment in time, as far as where he's playing and what he's done over the last couple of years. So I think he handled that pressure really well. And he knows exactly as to what he's capable of doing as far as his talent is concerned. And also not to play within himself or limit himself by, doing things that's not, out of ordinary. So for me, I think what he's done for the national team in a very short space of time is exceptional, in my opinion. And I expect him to do a lot more in the next few years.
Look, and I know the interview's coming to an end because this is a shorter interview we have with you, Shaun. But this is a little bit of a light-hearted question. I mean, we keep our eye on the Premier Soccer League, and we noticed that the game between AmaZulu and Gallants had to be called off because the teams had similar colored jerseys. Again, I don't know if you've ever been involved in that, but what was your take? I mean, on that entire.
Let me put it this way: it would have been like you're wearing a white shirt with a white cupboard behind him. That is not ideal, is it? It's not the best scenario, is it?
That's my flat pack. That's my flat pack.
Well, I'll give you kudos because you had to put it together yourself.
I didn't just have to. I didn't just have to put it together, Shaun. I had to put it together with my wife watching me.
That's pressure, dude. That's pressure.
Okay, I won't tell the public about the 2 screws that were left over. So, for me, honestly, I really felt embarrassed because you're talking about a top league, and PSL always, they always say, they're one of the top 10 leagues in the world, whether it be, with the revenue or the way it's run and everything. But to have a game abandoned, and we're not talking about from the first minute, we're talking about after 10 minutes. How long does it take you to recognize that actually there's a clash of colors between teams? Firstly, as a coach, I know there's a meeting before where you have to disclose home team and away team, what you're going to wear, what your goalkeepers are going to wear, what's the referees going to wear. So there's no way, any clash colors. So I honestly do not understand how it came to the match, started the match, and then realized, the 2 colors are very, very similar. The PSL have made an announcement. They're going to look into this, and people will have to be accountable for what happened, because when it comes to television rights also, these clubs obviously need to be responsible for that, and also to reschedule a venue also is very costly. So I'm hoping obviously the best outcome for this situation, but first instance, very embarrassing for the league, for the sponsors, for everybody, to be honest, whether it be the home team or away team. You need to make sure that you at least have a second kit available.
Shaun, we're going to wrap this up. But final question. You played in the Premier League, and I'm talking about the English Premier League. Ole at Man United's going through a difficult period. It's very quick how supporters can get on a manager's back from the couch. Never having managed a team in their lives, never having managed a junior team in their lives, always having answers on what should be done. What is your take on the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer situation at Man United?
So after making that long statement, he still asked my opinion. He just said my opinion. Well done, Courtney. Thank you very much for putting me on the spot. I really appreciate that. So when Ole do get vouchered out, you can just blame Shaun Bartlett. Thank you very much. I think everybody will always have an opinion. But as a coach, you can only control what's in your hands. What other people think, what other people believe, shouldn't really matter. Because at the end of the day, if they decide for you to do things and you get fired, it's not going to be your own decision. So whatever decision he's making at this moment in time, he knows it comes with consequences. And I think the very fortunate thing at this moment in time is guys like Ronaldo and Pogba and these guys is keeping him in a job, because I think every time he's on the verge of being sacked, the team comes up with the result. Whether it be a 3-0 last week at Spurs or even the draw against Atalanta, I think management is probably looking and around to see who's available or who's more experienced, because I think when it comes to the big matches, he hasn't really turned up probably more in a tactical way to get the best out of his players, because for instance, the Liverpool game was very disappointing and there was a lot of questions asked about that particular performance and the way he set up the team to try and get a result, and to be really thrashed at home by one of your biggest rivals. You could even see the expression on the face of Sir Alex. He wasn't happy. So I think it's skating on very thin ice, to be honest.
Shaun, honest as always. It's a pleasure to talk to you as always. Thank you for making time to meet with us again today. We wish you all the best in your new managerial role. I know you have the facilities there, but you also you feel the right person to make the right level of impact. From myself and Zayn, thank you so much for coming on this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not going to promote anyone, but I think, or any company, but I think hopefully the next few results in my season will be just as hot as that mutton curry from Mavisburg.
Maybe you get the third meal from Curry Court, Shaun. Maybe you get the third meal. But listen, thank you.
I'll take anything that comes in threes, even points.
Nice.
Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it.
All the best.
Always great. Cheers, mate.